Napoleon began his military life at an early age. In 1779, he was sent to a French military school for aristocrats. Napoleon later transferred to the military school of Brienne, where he studied for 5 years before moving to a military academy in Paris. There he graduated early and became the second lieutenant of artillery. At first, since the French Revolution was in progress, France had the levée en masse military tactic in action. The levée en masse is accomplished by either invading or occupying a country to take place against foreign troops. But when Napoleon became lieutenant, he incorporated his own military strategy. His objective was to utterly destroy his opponent. He was able to achieve his objective through different types of superior maneuver. In his first maneuver, he would move his French army across the enemy's line of communication. This forced the enemy to either battle the army or find an escape route. For his second maneuver, Napoleon drove a wedge separating the enemy armies. He would then use part of his force to mask one army while the larger portion overwhelmed and quickly defeated the second army. After the French Revolution ended, France created a plebiscite, which was a vote in which the entire electorate in France was asked to vote on a particular proposal. This certain plebiscite being that Napoleon becomes the Emperor of France. The majority of the plebiscite voted yes, and in 1804, Napoleon was crowned Emperor of France. As emperor, Napoleon reformed the government, education, and law. Napoleon reformed government by centralizing the national government, giving it firm control over France. Advancement in civil service was based on merit rather than rank. The government became more efficient by taxing everyone equally. Napoleon reformed education by building many schools throughout France. This made education more available to the middle class than it ever was before. These schools were only for boys ages 10 to 16 because he saw no importance in educating girls since they could not be a soldier or a representative in the government. Napoleon reformed law in 1804 by creating the Napoleonic Code. This was Napoleon's greatest civil achievement because its principles represented those of the French Revolution. At the beginning of his reign, France did not have a set body of laws that were standard around the country. This created unfair legal systems. He created the Napoleonic Code by rewriting these laws based off Roman law to make them more fair. Within these laws, he founded that all men were equal before the law. He also divided civil law into 3 categories: personal status, property, and obtainment of property. This guaranteed individual rights, security of property, and the ability to gain wealth and status to French men. Most of Europe was under the influence of the Napoleonic Code, causing it to base their laws off of it. During Napoleon's reign, France was at war with Britain, Russia, and Austria. He was in need of more military reinforcement because he was losing many military generals and soldiers to yellow fever. At this time, the United States wanted to buy a portion of France's Louisiana territory for $2 million. Napoleon saw selling a portion of it as a waste and instead stole the whole entire territory in 1803 for $20 million, $15 million for the territory itself, and $5 million for the United States to pay off their debt to France. During Napoleon's reign, he had many triumphant victories, one of which is the Battle of Austerlitz on December 2, 1805. Napoleon fought with 66,000 men against his allied enemies, Russia and Austria, who fought with 85,000 men. The battle was located on the Preston Heights, where Napoleon abandoned a strong central position on the peak and left his right flank weak. Russia and Austria saw that the peak was untouched and moved forward to what they believed was an advantage point. This weakened their center as they tried to destroy the French right flank. They had fallen into Napoleon's trap as reinforcement arrived. Marshal Davout's army helped Napoleon surround the Russian and Austrian army. After much hard fighting, Napoleon defeated the enemies. Those who fled drowned when a frozen lake collapsed under the weight of men and guns. The French lost 8,000 men, while the enemies lost 27,000 men and 180 cannons.
Okay, Napoleon issued the Berlin Decreases, which marked the start of what became known as the Continental System. The Continental System was basically destroying British trade and denying them the money they needed to fund Napoleon's enemies. Napoleon was taking a big step by trying to get global power, which is a very hard thing to do, considering you don't have that much power to do that. Then Napoleon soon realized that extensive trade was going through Spain and Russia, so invaded those 2 countries. So he ordered all European nations and French allies to stop trading with Britain, and he threatened Russia with an invasion if they did not comply as well. And they ended up losing to Russia very badly. Portugal openly refused to join the continental system, but to get to Portugal, Napoleon had to go through Spain, but the people in Spain does not like Napoleon, so his troops get. Then there was the Battle of Trafalgar, which was fought by the Royal Navy against the combined fleets of the French and Spanish navies. The war was most decisive naval victory, but Napoleon's naval plan was for the French and Spanish fleets in the Mediterranean and Cadiz to break through the blockade and join forces in the Caribbean. After failing from trying to get global power from Russia, his soldiers started to die because they wasn't prepared. They were not stable on food and water because they were fighting so far from from the French. But then later on, he was exiled to Elba. Elba is basically a prison island. Later, he soon escapes and returns back to Italy. When he returns back, he rattles up people that still liked him or was still loyal to proceed his mission. He eventually takes over emperor for only about 100 days. Then others who were still against Napoleon start to rebel toward him and soon started a war called Waterloo. Many states that had opposed him formed the Seven Coalition and began to mobilize armies. Napoleon chose to attack them in the hope of destroying them before they could join in a coordinated invasion of France with other members of the coalition. Waterloo was the decisive engagement of the Waterloo campaign and Napoleon's last. The defeat at Waterloo ended Napoleon's rule as Emperor of France and marked the end of his 100 days return from exile. After failing again, he was exiled to St. Helens for good. I'm pretty sure he died there.
To compare the concepts of this documentary to a modern-day issue, you can relate some of Napoleon's decisions to similar decisions of Donald Trump. Both people believe in the same form of government. They both believe in strong central governments.